Some wounds never bleed. They don't bruise, don't scar the skin, don't scream for help. Yet they can shape a life in the most invisible and haunting ways. This is the reality for countless individuals who've lived through narcissistic abuse, a form of emotional violence that distorts the sense of self, manipulates perception, and leaves lasting psychological damage. This article dives deep into the often misunderstood behaviors that emerge from this kind of trauma. Behaviors that may look weird or too much to outsiders, but are in fact complex coping mechanisms. The goal here is not only to shed light on the internal battles of survivors, but also to offer compassion, awareness, and, most importantly, the tools to reclaim control and heal. If you recognize these traits in someone, approach with patience. If you recognize them in yourself, know this: you are not broken. You are surviving something that tried to erase you. And that is not weakness, it is resilience. 1. Drifting away in the middle of conversations. When emotional overwhelm becomes a way of life, detaching mentally often becomes a form of survival. Survivors of narcissistic abuse may seem distant or zoned out during conversations, not because they are uninterested, but because their nervous system has been trained to retreat when emotions become too much. This dissociation is a learned behavior, a quiet mental escape from years of being belittled, gaslit, or emotionally cornered. In environments where expression was punished and silence was safer, disconnecting became the safest route. It's not about shutting people out, but about holding oneself together. 2. Living on high alert for disapproval. Hyper-awareness is not paranoia, it's survival instinct. Survivors often develop an extremely sensitive radar for tone shifts, body language, or even minor changes in expression. That's because in their past, the smallest sign of irritation could escalate into shame, punishment, or rejection. Reading too deeply into subtle cues isn't a sign of overthinking. It's the brain's effort to predict danger. This constant alertness can be exhausting, but it once served a very real purpose: avoiding emotional harm. Even in safe relationships, this old wiring can still run in the background. 3. Emotional flooding that feels like too much. Years of suppressing feelings often lead to moments of emotional flooding. Tears that appear without warning, anger that feels disproportionate, or anxiety that rises from seemingly nowhere. These aren't overreactions. They're delayed responses finally being allowed to exist. When emotions were previously dismissed, minimized, or twisted against someone, they learn to push those feelings deep inside. But emotions never disappear. They wait, and when safety finally feels possible, they begin to emerge all at once, often overwhelming both the survivor and those around them. 4. Using humor to mask old hurts. Dark humor, self-deprecation, jokes that make others pause. For many survivors, humor is not just entertainment, it's armor. It's a way to make pain feel manageable, to stay in control of difficult conversations, or to deflect vulnerability before anyone can use it against them. This kind of humor isn't meant to shock or alienate. It's a carefully crafted survival tool. And while it can make others uncomfortable, it's often the only way survivors have learned to process what they've endured. Underneath the laughter is a history of being silenced and the need to reclaim narrative through any means possible. 5. The urge to rescue everyone else. When your worth was tied to being useful, you learned to constantly anticipate others' needs. Survivors of narcissistic abuse often feel compelled to fix, help, or soothe others, even when it drains them. Their sense of identity may become deeply wrapped in being the caretaker, the one who holds everyone else together. This behavior often begins in childhood or relationships, where love had to be earned by serving others. Saying no feels selfish. Setting boundaries feels dangerous. Helping feels like the only way to feel safe or seen. But this compulsive caretaking can lead to burnout, resentment, and neglect of one's own needs, a cycle that must be gently broken. 6. Inconsistent online presence that reflects inner storms. There are days when the world feels welcoming and survivors feel safe enough to be visible, posting updates, sharing thoughts, engaging fully. Then, just as quickly, the walls go up. Silence returns. Messages go unanswered. Social media becomes a ghost town. This inconsistency mirrors the emotional landscape of someone navigating healing. Visibility can feel vulnerable. Sharing can feel like exposure. Online behavior often reflects deeper emotional cycles. The highs of confidence and the lows of fear and shame. It's not about inconsistency. It's about navigating safety in a world that once punished them for existing too loudly. 7. Nervous habits that soften the edge of anxiety. Fidgeting, nail-biting, tapping. These small, repetitive actions often serve as grounding mechanisms. Survivors may not even notice they're doing them, but they are instinctively trying to regulate internal chaos. These habits are not signs of boredom or distraction. They are echoes of a nervous system that has lived too long in survival mode. Each movement is a quiet attempt to stay present, to stay calm, and to hold the pieces together when everything once felt like it could shatter. 8. Intense reactions rooted in fear of loss. What may look like irrational jealousy often stems from a deep fear of abandonment. When love has been used as a weapon, given and taken to control, trusting others becomes a painful tightrope walk. Survivors may react strongly to situations that seem harmless, like a partner spending time with someone else. But to them, any sign of emotional distance can trigger panic. It's not about control, it's about safety. Learning to feel secure in relationships again takes time, patience, and consistent reassurance. 9. Avoidance of socializing and new connections. There's a reason survivors may hesitate in group settings or struggle to connect with new people. Their trust has been shattered, often by those closest to them. So stepping into a room full of strangers, or even friendly acquaintances, can feel like walking into enemy territory. Every interaction carries the risk of judgment, manipulation, or rejection. Being quiet doesn't mean they're cold. Sitting out doesn't mean they're uninterested. They are scanning the environment for safety. And sometimes the bravest thing they can do is simply show up. 10. Emotional triggers that feel like danger. Words, smells, tones of voice, even a familiar phrase. These small things can become massive emotional triggers for survivors. Their brains have learned to associate certain stimuli with danger, and when those memories are activated, the response is swift and intense. This is not oversensitivity, it's trauma. The reaction might seem disproportionate, but it's built on a foundation of real pain. Understanding these responses, rather than dismissing them, is crucial. Validation can be a first step toward helping someone feel seen and safe. The deep need for compassion and space. Every one of these behaviors tells a story, not of weakness, but of survival, not of dysfunction, but of adaptation in the face of psychological harm. Survivors of narcissistic abuse are not fragile. They are carrying emotional weight that most people will never understand. The world has not always been kind to them. Their experiences have shaped how they move, speak, and trust. What they need now is space to heal without judgment and permission to feel without shame. Healing doesn't happen on command. It unfolds slowly and often painfully, but with understanding, it becomes possible. Reclaiming power, piece by piece. Survivors have had their voices stolen, their confidence fractured, their sense of reality questioned, but none of that has erased their worth. Healing begins not with forgetting, but with remembering who they were before the distortion and deciding who they want to become now. That healing might look messy, it might feel endless, but each small act of self-compassion, each moment of honesty, each boundary drawn is a step toward reclamation. The path out of narcissistic abuse is not linear, but it is real, and it leads back to freedom. You deserve to heal. To anyone who has lived through narcissistic abuse, what you endured was not your fault. The confusion, the hurt, the lingering behaviors, they're all part of what was done to you, not who you are. There is nothing wrong with the way you survived, and there is everything right with the fact that you're still here, still fighting, still hoping. Healing doesn't mean becoming who you used to be. It means growing into someone even more grounded, self-knowing, and whole. Let yourself take up space. Let yourself be awkward. Let yourself rest. Let yourself heal. You were never meant to disappear.